I'm gonna go, y'all ready? I don't hate to push it. Y'all ready? All right. All right, this is the call to order to the Amherst County Service Authority Board meeting. Let the record reflect it is November 1st, 2021, and the time is 1:30. Our second order of business is citizen comments. Anyone wishing to speak? I see no one, so we'll go ahead and close the citizen comments. We'll move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes that need to be made, additions or deletions?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion on the floor to approve the agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And then we'll have the approval of the minutes for the October 5th, 2021 meeting minutes. Are there any changes that the board has seen, or if not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
All right, Mr. Parra will abstain.
Oh, you weren't here, were you? Okay.
All right, next we get to have a little bit of fun. We get the special presentation from Davenport and Company, the pro forma cash flow update. Hello.
How are y'all doing today?
Welcome, doing well.
I know y'all have the update in your package, but I also just handed out a hard copy for you. And the upshot on this package is we've added the scenario 3 discussed during the last board meeting. We actually went back the same day, ran it, and shared it. But I'm here to answer any questions. To back up a little bit and provide a little bit of perspective, last year's analysis, around this time, we were showing about 5.5% and 6% between water and sewer respectively. The borrowing for the dam project went down from $5 million to just under $2 million. So that was part of one of the things that would allow us to readjust our perspective on rate increases going forward, because we still have a couple huge projects out in the next several fiscal years. So what we originally did was we ran a case to drive it down to see how low we could go for today and beyond for future rate increases and still pay for those future projects. Another scenario we ran, and that was at 3.75 and 4.75. In our case 2, under tab 2, you see, that's where we said, well, let's throw back in some expansion, new expansion projects, and that was run at 5% and 6% respectively for water and sewer. During our discussion last month's meeting, the question was raised, well, where would the middle sort of put us with respect to rate increases for water and sewer, as well as how many dollars we could put toward those expansion projects. So if you turn to tab 3, this is the case that we added that answers those, or that question or those questions. We split the difference between the call it the 3.75 and 4.75% and the 5 and 6% for water and sewer, and landed at 4.38 and 5.38. So right in the middle, basically. And if you look at tab 3, it's page 33 of 36. On line 326, other line extension expansion, we were able to solve for effectively $350,000 per year with an assumed growth rate over the next several years. So at 4.38% for water and 5.38% for sewer, we're at a $350,000 per year funding for future expansion versus scenario 2, which had us at 400 and growing over the next several years. So it's a little bit under, obviously, what we had presented for case 2, but it still has a good level of future expansion funding should you choose to go down that path. At the rates of 4.38% and 5.38% for water and sewer respectively.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Nate, and I know I missed the last meeting, and I apologize if this was already out. Mr. Hoffman, what are you figuring for water and sewer per foot cost?
Depends on where it is. 100 for water, $100. Sewer, well, sewer pretty much the same.
So if you divide each of those by 100, it tells you about how many feet you can get.
3,500.
So obviously you see the driving needs, as I guess we're gonna discuss in our next, later on in the agenda, the the sewer expansion. The sewer expansion.
No, we obviously have the needs. I mean, we've got, especially for sewer, particularly for sewer.
That's-
Water, I think we're actually doing pretty well, and we'll talk about that in new business. But there are, like, you're all aware that the Monacan Indians just bought the Laurel Cliff Farms, and they're looking for a water main extension to get up to there, for their development. And there are a lot of other places that we need to extend water lines to connect dead-end lines, particularly on, Isaac Walton Road. I'm sorry, North Coolwell Road, up near the, convenience center. So, yeah, there's definitely a need, without a doubt.
Would you say it's more pressing to infill existing communities with sewer, or to make the loops and tines on the water side?
I've been saying all along, I think we ought to be consolidated. We've got, we've been growing, like, again, we'll talk about this in new business, but we've been growing leaps and bounds in new service connections, both water and sewer, for the next four or 5 years. Most of that without doing water sewer system expansions. We've got a lot of places in Madison Heights that don't have water or sewer, where there's either existing residences or commercial buildings there that we can tie on to. And of course, we got the sewer, which is the really big deal, because the sanitary surveys I've had the health department do are showing the Madison Heights sanitary sewers to be a ticking time bomb. And, it's several neighborhoods, particularly on Weinstack Road, and the two wastewater treatment plants. If we have problems there, you're gonna have hundreds, possibly, potentially hundreds of homes that are almost at the same time gonna need sewer extensions, which would be a crisis for a utility our size.
In what way?
And that we don't have the money to do millions of dollars of projects on a moment's notice. If we lose the Westbriar treatment plant right now, you immediately have 30 homes that are out of can't do anything. They can't flush their toilets. Ivanhoe, I think it's about 50. And we've got plans in the works to replace both those plants with pump stations and sewer that whole area. But you're talking years to be able being able to do that. And there are other areas in Madison Heights that are similar.
All right. Any other questions? I know we had went over this last week, last month. I know Mr. Martin had actually brought this to the table to look at a different scenario where we didn't go with the two items that we had. We split it in two. That, I believe that would be case 3 under this pro forma. As far as I'm concerned, I'd be willing to, unless there's further discussion and questions you would like to ask, this is something we need to go forward with and to give some direction to the Service Authority. This provides us with some, we've got the $1 million that's coming through the ARPA funds that will allow some extensions of our sewer and water. We also have case scenario 3 that allows us for about how much of $350 a year to put towards that. So, I know that it could always be more, but you also have to take into consideration that many of these people that are on water and sewer are working class people. Their funds are limited, so we got to be cognizant of that as well. but I'd be willing to, go with case 3. I think,
Can I just ask?
go ahead.
So just so I understand, between case 2 and case 3, you're only really, it's a difference of about 50,000 a year, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. And case 1 is what?
Case 1, let's look at page 17. That's where, on page 17, call it the new development expansion line item, which we just talked about, between 350 and 450. We had that zeroed out, but up on line 323, that's where the expansions into the existing areas have been layered in throughout the process.
And that is pretty much just sewer, but annually I budget about $100,000 for water. It just goes into the budget.
So I think I'm with the chair. I could support 3.
I agree with 3.
All right. All right. Is there any further? Go ahead.
As I'm looking between the two, I see you're talking about 15 cents a month. And that looks like 25 cents a month difference between items 2 and 3. I'm worried about the inflation. I'm worried about the cost of materials. It's a lot of liquidity in the economy right now, and that's driving everything up. So I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to determine. I haven't made a decision yet. I'm trying to determine if it makes sense. Certainly 3, but maybe I think 2 should be considered.
You bring up a good point. With the way inflation is going right now, it's really going to reduce what we can do with whatever money that that you all do decide on.
I think you have a very good point. Just as inflation is going to affect the service authority, it's affecting our customers, right? So that's kind of where I'm leaning, trying to keep the costs down a little bit.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, I will make a motion that the ACSA Board adopt rate and fees adjustment for 2022, case number 3. And direct the ACSA Executive Director to proceed with the first reading of draft ordinance 2021-0012 at today's supervisors meeting, and a second reading and public hearing at a joint meeting of the ACSA Board and Amherst County Board of Supervisors at the Supervisors 11/16 meeting, during which adoption of ordinance 2021-0012 with final rates and fees adjustments adopted by the Amherst County Service Authority Board for 2022 will be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for adoption.
Before you vote, I just want to make sure, for my clarification, you went with option 2 in this motion, right?
3.
Option 3.
Okay, with case 3, which is option.
Okay.
Yeah, case 3,
Okay.
option 3, case,
Okay,
yes.
but you're
case
still
3.
looking at possibly reducing that at the public hearing.
It's a possibility, but I think at this point, inflation is a concern and, huh? Oh, no, I don't think we're plan on doing that.
Case 3 is the,
5 and 6.
no,
Case 3 is splitting the baby, so to speak.
that's right. 4.38 and 5.38.
Right.
So, there's a motion on the floor. Everything clear, Mr. Hopkins?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, motion on the floor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Certainly do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Two other attachments to this agenda item include draft ordinance 2021-0012, which I hope, we've never done it this way before, so I hope it captured what you all decided at the last board meeting about how we were going to do this, which is pretty much what you just decided, that you are looking at, the ordinance calls for the maximum of 5%, 6% with the ability of the board to reduce that, the supervisors to reduce that at the public hearing on the 16th. And the second attachment is the joint public hearing announcement. Came out this week and will come out again next week, so that'll take care of the required public announcements for the public hearing.
All right, okay. Next, we have our monthly financial report for August 2021.
Okay. All right, again, like last month, at first glance, it looks like our water sales seem to have dropped compared to 2020, the same period through 2020, down to a little less than 3%. That is an improvement over last month's, which was almost 4.5% down from the previous period in 2020. And it also, again, like I explained last month, you got to keep in mind that the 2020 revenue included that VDOT reimbursement, almost $300,000 for the Woodies Lake Road project. If you take that out, and water sales are actually for 2021, actually almost 9.3% ahead of 2020. We only had 2 service connections in September. That makes us 28 for the year, which is, with September, through September, we're through 75% of 2021, and we've got 80% of the number of connections in 2020, so we are ahead this year in connections. Total water revenues were about a little over 8% better than 2020. September was a really good month for wastewater sales, almost 35.5% in last month's report, improving the comparison to 2020 to almost 4.3%. We had no new sewer connections in September, but 3/4 of the way through 2021, we are almost 87% ahead of 2020 when it comes to revenue for new services. Total wastewater revenues were down over 24%, but again, we had that PRISM reimbursement that they sent us when a contractor payment was we overpaid on a project. So they sent us over $282,000 back. That's not really revenues, that's just a reimbursement for an overpayment. So I think it's appropriate to delete that, and if you do that, wastewater revenues are actually about 60% better than 2020. So total service authority revenues through September compared to the same period in 2021 are about 0.6% better if you don't include those 2 reimbursements. If you do, it goes up to almost 600,000 and over 18.25% better than 2020. The total accounts receivable monthly chart show that we didn't have a real good September. The revenues for that month were almost 73,000 or 15.5% less than what I projected at the beginning of the year. But even with that bad September, the cumulative chart shows that we are 63,500, 1.7% ahead of budget projections, revenue projections made at the start of the year. Last month, it was one of the board members suggested that we were talking about the water and sewer rates increases, and we just talked about them again. And the thought was that the originally recommended increases of 3.75% water and 4.75% sewer might not be sufficient when it comes to make sure we don't have higher rate increases in the future, because we're not doing system expansions. We're not getting enough new sewer customers on board to bring in new revenues and it might require higher rate increases in the future. I actually went back and looked at the December 2016, end of the year 2016 financial report that either I or Dan French presented, and it turns out I was shocked. From then till now, we've got a total of over 400 new water connections and almost 80 new sewer connections. Now, that's not all new sewer services. That in a lot of cases, that is people who moved out of a house or an apartment or whatever, and the service lay dormant for a while, and new people have come in and restarted that. But still, we're over 400 connections or occupied connections better than 2016 in water, and almost 80 better in sewer. So it's not like I don't think we're hurting for new service connections. And if you go back and look at the revenues every year, we're showing every year we do better than the previous year in revenues. I just wanted to bring that to your all's attention as you look at the potential rate increases for next year. And that's all I had for the monthly financial report, unless you all have questions.
I do have a question. Under the water department, there's a category called penalties.
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
Late fees. Late fees can be tampering fees. It could be, it's a lot of things lumped into one category.
All right, any further questions?
Mr. Hopkins, thanks
Sir.
for putting the account number in next to Appalachian Power.
Yes, sir.
All right, seeing no further questions, we'll go ahead and move on to old business of Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Pugh. Again, as usual, I'll just touch base on the things where there's been some noticeable activity on these projects. The James River Bank stabilization, I'm expecting to get VDOT approval of our variance for the design. I reported last week that they want additional, they want a wider cross-section than is available in the area. We've put in a variance for that through Hurt and Profit, and I'm hoping to hear back from them soon that that is approved and the plans are approved, and we can proceed with starting to remove sidewalk and hopefully start water line installation later on this year. That segues into VC Mobile Home Park, because of course the Colony Road water line extension is phase one of the project to maintain the water service to that trailer park. I just mentioned the VDOT response on the variance and getting ready to start work, hopefully start work later this year. Grand Creek Reservoir Dam Improvements Project, we're still waiting to hear back from DCR on the site plan review. And we did complete a tabletop exercise last week that involved the Grand Creek Reservoir, the 3 county dams, and a couple of the private dams in the county. Hurt and Profit moderated that. Service Authority had 7 people there, and I think the county had 3 or 4, and there were some other people there from the private dams. Berkshire Place Sanitary Sewer Extension, we'll talk about that in new business. Under the EDA Business Friendliness Initiative, Priority 1A, Mr. Taylor just gave the most recent update to the 2021 pro forma, and we'll also be talking about that again in new business. Priority 2, the Assistant Director will give you a report on updates for the new ACSA website in a few minutes. Priority 6, the water office improvements. We're still working with the state on the possibility of leasing at least a portion of Building 10 in the Lower Rapidan area. We've got a meeting scheduled. Mr. Hall and I will be talking to the state officials this Friday, and I'll report back later as to where we're going with that. COVID-19, we applied for almost $66,000 in customer arrearage money to the Department of Housing and Community Development. That's the total 60-day customer utility account arrearages as of the end of August. And the first 2 times we did this, we got less than 50% of what we asked for. This time we got over 75%. We got, I heard late Friday that we got over $46,000 coming from the state. I'm working on the certification document, and we'll get it to the county finance director this week, and we will proceed from there. And my plan is to administrate it the same way we did it with the first 2, giving priority to people who are on installment payment plans or get on installment payment plans and get them up to date. But we will use every bit of that money. And that's all I've got on old business, unless you all have questions.
All right, no questions. Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. We'll move on to the Assistant Director's Report. Mr. Hall?
Thank you. So I wanted to let you know a recent joint advisory published Thursday, last week, by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the FBI, the NSA, and the Environmental Protection Agency, that in addition to that Florida attack that took place earlier in the year by a hacker trying to poison the water system, there were other utilities that were also attacked this year that didn't make the news. Recently, I guess, found out that in March, there was a utility that was hacked in Nevada. In July, there was one in Maine, and in August, there was one in California. So with that being said, we wanted to let the board know the steps we were taking for cybersecurity, and we will continue to look for ways to increase our confidence in cybersecurity protection, but this is where we are at this point, and that's all I have for that, unless you have any questions. So what you see there are things that we have accomplished in the past year, and there are a couple of things that we're continuing to work on, and let you know what the percentage complete was.
All right, well, thank you for your work. Take your word for it. It's beyond me. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, and typically these guys are always one step ahead of the people that provide the security. So it's going to be an ongoing problem. You just try to prepare.
Thank you. We discussed last time our emergency response plan that we were working on. That's a requirement by EPA that is due to be complete and certified by December the 21st. This last week on Wednesday, we actually had an opportunity to use some of the things out of our draft emergency response plan. On the 27th, one of our operators went to our lift station number 1 for sewer and found that the lot didn't have any power. So from the time that the operator reported this to our office, and we reached out to AEP, in which we have a person that handles our account for us, and he coded the outage as a priority. Let us know when the dispatchers were being sent to, dispatch actually dispatched their line crew to be sent to our site, when they arrived, what they found, and let us know when the power was back up. The incident only lasted for 1 hour and 48 minutes. And so that shows that our emergency response plan actually has some good things to it. It does work. We did an after action review, and there's a couple of things we need to make adjustments in our plan, but it was a good tabletop exercise for us. We are still on task to complete this in December by the required date. We have listed that we are replacing the gas and diesel pumps at the Lanham Water Filtration Plant. Not much has changed, except we are anticipating a lead time of 16 plus weeks, and they were supposed to ship the equipment on October the 29th. I reached out to the vendor to ask him if that actually took place last Friday. I didn't get a response before we came today, but we did go ahead and obtain an electrical permit through the Amherst County Building and Safety Inspections Department that's required for this change out. So hopefully we're on track for that. We'll get it done relatively quickly. Another project will be finished. Any questions? Okay. The new website that Mr. Hopkins mentioned earlier, we are still working on that. We did determine that our domain that we use for our email address will also be used for our website. So we have an actual website address. It's not posted out there for everybody to look at yet. We will be looking at a preliminary screenshot of our new homepage and the tree or drop downs or links on our website on Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully at that time we'll have a way that we can all take a look at our new website, and we should still be on track for having our new website up and running in December. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Can you tell us who will be reviewing the website? You said we. I don't know who we.
Well, right now, it's just myself and our operations manager, but we're also going to get the link for Mr. Hopkins to attend, and also Glenn and anybody else. We can send it to you too. Certainly would love any feedback we get from anybody.
I just know there was discussion at the EDA joint meeting for other like customers and stuff to take a look at it to see if they could read it, understand it, that type of stuff too.
We really, I think we ought to get to a point where, I mean, we haven't even seen it yet. I think we need to have an idea of where we're going with it before we bring in outside agencies. That's the thought anyway.
Okay.
Absolutely, we'd entertain any recommendations on this to make it better for our public, for our customers to use. Okay. The new inventory management assignment that we discussed the last board meeting as a result of our audit. Not much has changed on that. I'm still working on getting familiar with the inventory, trying to maybe clean up some of the old inventory that we are able to get rid of and make some needed adjustments on our software. I'll continue to let you know how we're going with that. Got a lot of work to do there in that area. And then the last thing I would bring up is that in addition to the information that Mr. Hopkins has mentioned about the CBTC water utility piping replacements, he has asked me to take a look at the existing infrastructure and to mark the locations of the existing water lines in preparation for a hurt and profit survey and possible easement preparations. And so we are looking to make a direct route. I think it was mentioned in a previous board meeting, from the entrance of the campus through the middle of the campus directly to the VC Mobile Home Park and to the water pump station. We'll also include a route to the elevated storage tanks and also marking the east, the Lynchburg City, east end of the Lynchburg City water line. So we're working on that.
All right, well, it looks like you've been busy, which is a good thing, and, any other comments from the board? We thank you what you do, and, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hopkins, you're back with the, new business 2022 lead and copper testing results.
Yes, sir. We got the results last week. We do these things, we're on, what do they call it? The ultimate reduced monitoring, which means we only have to test for lead and copper every 3 years, because we typically have very low results. And that was confirmed again this year. If you have time, had time to look at the attachments, well, we go through and we test 30 samples throughout the water system. For lead, only 2 showed measurable levels of lead. The other 30, or the other 28 they couldn't even be measured. And the 2 were well under 3 parts per billion. The action level is actually 15 parts per billion. So we're in real good shape there. Copper, 10 had measurable copper, but nowhere near the action level of 1.3 milligrams. So we are again, we again qualified for the ultimate reduced monitoring. We're not going to have to test again until the period from June to September of 2024. And we've talked briefly in the past few months about the lead and copper, the lead service line replacement program. We still don't have, EPA still hasn't finalized the program, and the Department of Health still hasn't finished their guidelines, which they can't do until EPA finishes their program. I attend about 1 webinar a month on this issue, and one of the things I'm going to bring up next time is this letter. And it just seems to me, I'm confident that it's not going to have an impact, but it seems to me that with the Service Authority, and I'm sure other utilities throughout the state and probably throughout the country, getting these kind of reports on a regular basis where we obviously don't have a lead problem, that maybe the incredible amount of time and effort and impact on our customers of having to confirm whether or not we have lead service lines, which we obviously don't, it really needs to be done. And I'll report back to you all later as to what EPA and VDH say.
All right.
All I've got on that, unless you have any questions.
Nope, sounds good. Sounds like you're under the threshold. I know that it's very imperative. You look at the lead and so forth because of all the stuff that happened in Flint, Michigan.
Yes, sir.
And other areas, but, next we got the ACSA availability fees.
Okay. At the, Ms. Moore just brought up the joint ACSA board, EDA board workshop last month. And I was tasked to put together a comprehensive description of availability fees to be eventually uploaded onto the website after the Service Authority Board approves it. An EDA board looks it over, and I also want to get it out to certain developers I know to look at it for ease of reading, ease of understanding, clarifications, that sort of thing. But there's the draft is attached. I also emailed it to you all this morning. Of course, I'm not looking for a decision today. This is going to be an ongoing thing. But if you all will look it over and see if you have any changes you want to make, it is kind of long. It's a 4-page narrative, but with everything that needs to be. If you want to do a comprehensive description and keep it as uncomplicated as possible, it needs to be relatively long. And also to correct the misperceptions of the EDA and the development community about our availability fees being high or being excessive or stifling development in the county. I've got a lot of wording in there that shows how we mitigate those fees and how we compare with other utilities, especially the neighboring utilities. And I would like to think that if people go through and read this and really read it to understand it, that we might eliminate a lot of these misperceptions and eliminate the almost annual complaints we get from various agencies about our fees being too high. So I'll just wait to hear back from you all with any comments you all have.
All right, any,
I've got some initial feedback.
Yes, sir, please.
I hear what you're saying. To me, the intent of the notice was to explain where our fees are coming from and how we form our fees. I didn't feel like, the way I read this draft, it seemed to me as more of a defense of why our fees are.
Not so much a defense, but an
Well,
explanation.
It cited Bedford County, it cited Campbell County. Well, I don't think we should be citing other counties' fees in our policy statements.
Well, the whole purpose of this, or where this originated, was the complaints that our fees are so much higher than other agencies.
Right.
And the idea is that if we're going to eliminate those, they're misperceptions, and if we're not going to talk about them, we're never going to eliminate the misperceptions. This is going to go on. It's been going on for decades, and it's going to continue.
I just said that I thought that intent was to explain how we derive our fees, not to defend our fees, but explain how we derive them. So again, we shouldn't be, I don't believe we should, and I'm just one voice here, that we should be talking about other counties' fees. They can always change their fees one way or the other.
Sure.
But our policy about how we derive our fees should be consistent until time we change it. We're in control of that. I thought it was interesting, the discussion on equivalent residential units. We use 275. You said other localities use 225.
That's my understanding from Dan French. I never researched it myself, but that's what he told me.
VDH uses 400. Why don't we be consistent with VDH, and we can adjust our fees based on where they need to be. So if we could lower our fees, that's great, using 400 gallons per minute, according to VDH's, 400 gallons per day, so that's VDH's definition, then that's gonna cut that amount. It's gonna be used.
Sure will. I was not aware the VDH used that figure.
So I think we should look at that, which would bring that number down significantly. Now, if that adversely impacts your revenues, then we need to talk about that as well. One of the statements that was made at the very beginning is that they are not used for operational costs. And I'm trying to verify, or operational expenses, excuse me. I'm trying to verify that, because at the meeting you said that they were used for operational. So I'd like some clarity around that point.
Okay, I added that specifically because of what you had said, and you said you wanted to adjust the budget to make the tap fees used just for these expansions. That's why I put that. They're not right now, but this is a document that's going to be going up pretty soon, and we are looking at adjusting the budget to take care of it, to follow your recommendation. So I went ahead and put that in there.
All right, well, let's make sure that we're being factual. If we're not doing it, we shouldn't say it. If we are doing it, or we plan to do it, then make sure that we don't say we're doing it before we actually implement it.
Okay.
As well. So I'd like to look, you also said that you were thinking about distributing this for comment amongst other groups. I don't think we're ready for that yet. I think that we need to consolidate and understand what it is that what message it is that we want to convey to the EDA, to the public. What is that message? Make sure we agree upon that. And then if we want some feedback, we can certainly get some. I don't think it's quite ready to be shared yet.
Oh, I agree.
And I'll be happy to, if we would share a Word copy, I'll be happy to add some of my comments to it.
I emailed it, no, I'm sorry, I sent you a PDF. I will send you a Word copy.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any other comments?
I agree with Mr. Perro. It's not ready to share yet. And I understand why you've made it, so wordy. I just think we need to simplify it a little bit more, is what I'd be looking for.
Well, Ms. Moore said at the workshop that she would unengineer it or de-engineer it, so I'll be looking for her comments.
Yeah.
Well, it is very wordy, and I think for the general public, when they go to view it, they're not gonna spend time diving in as deep as this is written. So
Well,
we're
keep in
gonna,
mind, the general public won't be looking at this. This doesn't affect the general public. This is for developers. General public doesn't.
well, the general public of the developers. I don't know that they're gonna spend enough time reading all of this. I think we need to make a Cliff Note version of it, and then when they have questions, then we can answer those questions. Just my
Look for those
personal.
comments.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess you got your orders there, Mr. On what you need to do here. Maybe, Mr. Perro and the rest of us can come up with some suggestions, but, it's a start, and it's always good to me, to have more information. You can always redact it, or like Ms. Moore said, put it into a little shorter form, so, I appreciate the work, though. I know you put a lot of time into this, so I certainly do appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, well, if there's no further comment, we'll move on. We'll go to the Berkshire Place sanitary sewer extension.
At last month's meeting, you all recall that Habitat for Humanity staff came and talked about this sewer extension, which we talked about several months ago. Mr. Martin asked me to go through and get more information regarding other available potential sewer connections that would possibly increase the return on investment if we do this. What I've done is include an excerpt from the Health Department's recent sanitary survey of the area. And you'll see that I've noted both where Brookshire Place and Nottingham Place are. And the heavy green lines are the existing sewer lines in the area. The heavy red lines are the proposed sewer extensions. And if you look at the line going up between Berkshire Place and Nottingham Place, you'll see on the left-hand side of the red line the 3 Habitat lots that are outlined and numbered. And there is a little mark in that red line showing where the sewer extension would need to go to handle those 3 lots. That extension would be able to connect those 3 lots plus 9 existing lots that are on drain fields that are currently well over 50 years old. And the conventional wisdom is drain fields last at the most 30 to 40 years. So we got 9 lots in that area that are living on borrowed time. Maybe not for failure, but at least for repairs, costly repairs. And if you extend that sewer further, like I discussed last month, what I'd like to do is eventually get it all the way up to Winesap Road as a discharge point for the pump station to replace the West Briar wastewater treatment plant. But that would increase the existing lots that could connect from 9 to 13, and plus an additional lot that's on a drain field that's over 30 years old. So that's another one that is in danger. And one of the things I also wanted to point out, if you look at this lot, look at the map in general, if you look at the number of red dots, these are the lots, these are all homes that are on drain fields that are over 30 or over 50 years old. And that is why the sanitary service survey, the way it describes it, I describe it as a ticking time bomb. Because all these homes went in at about the same time. They're about the same size. They're on the same properties, the same kind of soils, same kind of topo. They could all go at about the same time within a reasonable time range. If they do, this would be potentially a real crisis for the service authority and for these homes. If they can't flush it, my understanding from the health department is that if they cannot use their drain fields and can't repair them, they gotta condemn the houses and people gotta move out. So this is something we really need to be looking at.
So how many feet of sewer would that be? Just to get to the line that you have drawn?
I think it's about 200 feet.
At
I'd have to
about
go back and look for
$100
sure.
a foot?
I'm sorry?
At about $100 a foot?
Yes, sir.
That's just to service the 3 lots, correct? That's
Yes.
just to get up Berkshire.
Right.
So earlier you mentioned that pump station which has not been replaced, correct?
No, we have 2 wastewater treatment plants. One, you can see on this map in the lower left-hand corner, the Ivanhoe Forest. There's another treatment plant on the other side of Winesap Road, West Briar, and we want to replace both of those with pump stations.
Right.
That's part of the part of the reason for that is the DEQ came out with new rules in 2019 that dramatically lower the ammonia nitrogen discharge levels in wastewater treatment plant discharges. And there's a real good chance that these plants are not going to be able to handle it. Plus, the plants they're over 50 years or almost 50 years old now, and the anticipated service life was 40 years. So again, it's just another
the plants
problem.
are in the same shape as the drain fields.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I'm just asking a question, or would it be prudent to expand the sewer prior to replacing the existing treatment facility with a pump station?
Well, there's only so much you can do because both plants are small and they have a limited number of design connections, a limited amount of design capacity. We wouldn't be able to expand the sewer too much and bring on too many houses before we would overburden the plants.
Yeah, these
What I'm
things-
looking at doing is
tiny.
replacing the plants with the pump stations and do sewer extensions at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I'd hate to expand on the sewer and then put these people that we are telling that we're going to service at risk because we don't have pump stations.
Well, we really don't have a choice because there are so many homes here. Any pump station that we put in right now just to handle the existing homes would be undersized and it would not work efficiently, it wouldn't operate efficiently. So we do need to get a lot more homes connected before we really can put in a pump station, or at the same time we put in a pump station to make sure it operates efficiently.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, sir. I guess the main question for us right now is, I believe Habitat came looking for assistance to extend the sewer to those 3 lots,
Yes,
right? So that's roughly 200 feet, I believe you said.
I think I'd have to go back and check to be sure, but it's about that, I think.
Okay, so just for discussion purposes, that's about $20,000, right? Okay, so $20,000 gets you a definite 3 connections and another possible 9 if their drain fields failed, right?
Well, it will be more than $20,000. We may have to purchase easements to get up through there. There may be, there's gonna be additional work that we have to do. The $100 a foot is for the pipe. It doesn't include manholes. This is probably gonna be a project on the order of the,
250. So let's call it 25,000.
well, it's probably gonna be, I would bet, it's gonna be on the order of a Westvale court. It's probably gonna be close to 100,000.
Well,
I haven't priced it, but I'm
Okay.
guessing that off the top of my head.
well, the numbers matter to me because when I was asking about return on investment to me is how soon would we recoup the cost of the sewer extension, right? So 20,000, 25,000 is a lot different than 100,000. So how long, you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
So-
sir. I do.
And, I mean, we're obviously not gonna go in and extend everything, all of those red lines right now, because you'd have to, what I'm hearing you say is we'd have to build a new pump station.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is existing station capable of handling the 3 new lots and the potential 9 other
Yes, sir.
lots? Okay. So I guess we're back to what my main question is. How much would it cost to extend it to serve those 3 lots? And how long would it take for us to recoup that investment?
I'll get you those numbers.
I mean, does that make sense to you guys? Okay.
Mr. Hopkins?
Sir,
You know, there's certainly an economy of scale when you're building this. You had said, I'm trying to recall from your conversations with USDA, did you discuss sewer extensions and it potentially being funded by USDA in this area?
yes,
And was that
not to
not-
any detail, just very generally,
Was there an opportunity to do that or not?
possibly. We're gonna have further discussions. My discussion, I don't remember the guy's name, but it was a general discussion about what might be available. He mentioned he asked if we had any projects we were looking at. I mentioned this, I didn't go into any details, and, we were gonna talk again later.
So, I don't, generally sewer has a very low chance of having any return on your investment. They do, you know, 50 years, 60 years is problematic, where there's an opportunity to find funding to do it, such as USDA, or maybe there's another source of funding out there. If you could get the grant funding, they've got very agreeable terms for borrowing, sometimes they'll grant the actual money itself, and then you can replace pump station and extend this line work out completely for the ultimate build out, and let them pay for it, and solve the problem that you were speaking of. Of course, it costs a bunch of money, and if USDA can fund it, or either through grants, loans, or combination of the two, it certainly helps. In reviewing this, where is your pump station? Where's your force main going? I see one going off. I'm assuming that's the east. I also see one towards the north.
The one going off to the east would be the force main from the Ivanhoe Forest Pump Station to our sewers on Route 29.
Okay.
So
And
we'd be
what's the one
pumping
on the north?
from-
Is that one coming into that?
No, that's the effluent pumps, force main from Ivanhoe Forest to Route 29, dumping into the sewers up on Route 29. The other one would be, that you see up in the upper left-hand corner,
Yeah, yes.
that's the force main coming from the West Briar pump station.
And is that drop into this wastewater treatment plant?
Yes,
Okay. So in addition to what we're seeing here, that treatment plant's picking up flow from up across the road also.
right. One of the things, when I talked to Hurt and Profit about it, they suggested having, instead of West Briar pump station being pumped to the Ivanhoe Forest pump station, instead running a force main along Winesap Road all the way up to Route 29, and that just seemed to me like a lot of extra money for a force main. And it just seemed like it'd be a lot easier just to extend our sewers. I mean, we want to extend the sewers up to Winesap Road anyway to pick up as many homes as possible. So it'd be a relatively simple matter just to cross the road with the force main and dump the West Briar wastewater into one of those manholes, let it go down to Ivanhoe Forest.
So it's not doing that now?
No, sir.
All right, okay, that's the clarification I was looking for.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so where's it going now?
It's got its own treatment plant.
They both have their own treatment
That's
plants.
the treatment
Right.
plant down there, which is in what kind of condition?
It's working well now, but it's over 50 years old. It has an anticipated service life of 40 years. So right now we're fine, but a treatment plant can fail suddenly very easily. And if it does, the West Briar the West Briar neighborhood has over 30 homes that would immediately not be able to dispose of wastewater. And you can see where we are on, I'm sorry, you can't. It's probably 30 to 40 homes for Ivanhoe Forest treatment plant.
So again, that's another, if you've got two wastewater treatment plants that are fairly close together, comparing them both to pump stations and extending lines would be a nice USDA project if the area is fundable for them. And also makes sense if we've got the capacity that we own in the Lynchburg plant, then use as much of that as you possibly can.
Yes, right now, we've got plenty of capacity. That's not a problem.
It's gonna be less expensive to use that than it is to maintain and operate separate. Plus, you can scale up pump stations for size. You can have smaller, you can add pumps as need be, or you can scale them down. So I don't see expansion as a problem.
Just to elaborate on the grants, with the 2019 DEQ rules, the VAMWA and other agencies were able, they joined together and got the state General Assembly to approve grants for, or to require, to require DEQ to, right now DEQ will not grant fund pump stations because they are considered, they're not treatment, they're conveyance. And it's because of the impact of the new ammonia nitrogen rules on treatment plants all over the Commonwealth, the General Assembly has approved a law requiring DEQ to at least give serious consideration to grant funding for pump stations that replace treatment plants, up to the amount that the treatment plant would have to be upgraded to meet the new ammonia nitrogen rules. So there's another, that's probably at least $500,000 that I'm looking at getting grant money from DEQ for the pump stations.
Good.
So, Mr. Perry, I think everything that you said is very logical as usual. I guess, so you're saying let's kind of wait, see if we can get this grant funding and do the whole thing. In the meantime, do we just let Habitat sit?
I think you just extend the lines, honestly, just hope it's not $100,000 worth.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with it, is, if
3 lots, $100,000.
if it's 25,000 is one thing, if it's 100,000, it's another, right? I think the cost is very important for us to make a decision in the near term what to do about those 3 habitat lots, because eventually we'd want to extend that line anyway, all right, for the full project. So it's very important for me to know what it would cost to extend that line to serve the 3 habitat lots.
Okay. Some of the factors driving up the cost, number one is, of course, we've got to have engineering services. That's probably going to be another $20,000 worth of work right there. We do not do sewer installations, so it's going to have to be bid out and contracted. And the way construction prices are right now, that's going to be a pricey deal. I don't think the $100 a foot may not even be any good anymore.
I would agree with that. But these lots are owned by Habitat, correct?
Yes.
So they should give you the easements, assuming the lots are deep enough.
Well, they will, but you can see we've got to cross, we got to go behind another half dozen homes.
So extending down.
Well, but in turn, the majority of those homes have drain fields that could fail in the future. It'd be in their best interest to give us the easements also.
Yes, sir. And when I sent out my letters earlier this year asking for easements for just this purpose, I described all that. I sent letters out to, I think it's about 10 different property owners, got one response back, and he said he might think about it. So it seems very logical. I mean, it also drives up your property values. If you've got sewer there that you can tie into, if your drain field goes bad, your property value goes up. Yeah. But people just don't, a lot of times people just don't think that way, or maybe they just don't want to respond. They got other things on their mind. And so I do need to get back with all these people and touch base with them again to see if we can get easements.
Do you typically just send a letter out? I mean, because I don't think that's a very effective method of saying, hey, we're talking about a sewer extension project. I mean,
It depends on where we are on the project. On the Lakeview project, I've been out to visit almost everybody that we're trying to get easements from. Sat down, took the plans out there, described them. Trying to go out there without plans to describe these things, the people are not engineers. A lot of times they just don't understand what you're really asking for. So what I try to do is have plans that I can show them exactly where the sewer is going to be, how deep it's going to be, why it's got to go where it goes.
I mean, I think to get buy-in, you could very well go out with a concept map like this to kind of explain. I know in some other localities, they'll go out and have a neighborhood meeting. And maybe that's a meeting that is partnered between Habitat and the Service Authority. But, maybe you get Roriton Club on wherever it is, and just have the meeting and see if you can get people to come so you can actually meet face to face with them to discuss.
Okay, we've done that in the past, so yes, sir, we could do that.
What about an incentive? If you were gonna have to get an easement through someone's property, and they have their septic system is not failing, but it may, and they get a free hookup, for allowing, I don't know if we're even allowed to do that by the bylaws, but certainly, if you could incentivize.
We do. Not that way. The code does not allow, the fees have to be paid, unless the
The fees would
supervisors.
have to come out of, we would have to pay the fees in essence, right? The service authority would have to pay the fees.
That's board policy, historic policies, we don't do that. If the supervisors want to do it, if the EDA wants to do it, that's fine, but we don't pay those fees.
Just a thought,
But the incentive comes from people who are on drain fields and get off their drain fields and connect.
Yeah.
If we put in a new sewer and people connect within a year, they get 60% break on the availability fee, saves them about $3,000.
This is just a general, I know we're talking about Ivanhoe, but I don't know if you all have had a chance to actually look at the VDH assessment results. I think if you haven't, I know when Dan French was here, I went down there and met with him, and he's got a map of all of our sewer and all of the places in the county that have failing systems or systems that may fail. I know we're talking a lot about expansion, but if you all could put your eyes on that thing, I think it'd give you a much better point of view on places we need to expand or we need to bring our sewer through. Because, you can see here, this is just one area, but there's large areas down in Madison Heights on Lower Madison and different areas that are going to have to be replaced too. So if you haven't, I would highly advise you all to take a look at that VDH assessment report.
I agree with you completely. When we were talking earlier, I was trying to ask what's more important, the sewer I was referring to was sewer infill, just like you're talking to. If you can densify your system, then you can get a better return for your revenue in that area.
certainly
I
agree.
agree with you completely about that.
And Ivanhoe, this is in my district on the board, there's a little small facility right on a creek, on Fawn Creek, and it dumps right into the creek. Years ago, we used to run horses there, and, I don't know, we had problems with the horses aborting. We didn't know if it was the water or what. So I'm familiar with it. That's what we thought it might have been. But of course, you follow all the guidelines and rules of what's going on. But I assume the other one is the same way. It's a little small, probably about the size, a 20 by 20 holding tank, and it dumps into the creek. Of course, these subdivisions were put in and they were going to but it didn't perk. And then the next thing you know, they had to go back and put a private sewer system in to allow the sewer to go in there. We didn't put this in, right? Is that correct?
correct.
So these are
Developers put
actually, developer put them in. So just a little, yeah. So there's no planning. I don't even think we had zoning when these went in there. So they put the houses on too small lots. There was no reserve drain field for the lots. So now you run into a problem where you got failing systems. And that's what a lot of the stuff in Madison Heights, they're small lots. If you got a bigger lot and it perks, you have no problem.
That's correct.
So I just think it would be good for everyone to take a look at that because it'll give you a lot more insight. That's my spiel. Anyway. Is there any other questions on the Berkshire Place sanitary sewer? Seeing, I guess a price, that's what you're asking, right, Mr. Martin? It's just give us a ballpark figure on what this will cost and we can figure out whether or not it makes financial sense.
I'll do the same thing for this that I did for Westvale Court.
All right. All right, we are off to citizen comments. There's no citizens here, so we'll move on to matters from members of the board. Mr. Para? Ms. Moore?
Well, I have a couple things. The logo looks good on the agenda. Thanks for working on that. Getting it
Well,
on there.
what looks bad though, if you look at the item, the agenda item reports, it didn't change on there.
Oh, well, it looks
And
good right here.
I gotta go back and try to fix that. I don't know why it didn't do it.
Do you have a
But thank
status update on the minutes from the EDA meeting? Like, do you plan to have them for the next EDA joint meeting, or were you send them out earlier?
Well, I was hoping to get them out this past week, but with losing a day on the, on getting the agenda out because of moving the meeting up, and then I was out sick with a flu shot reaction 2 days last week, so I'm behind. I'm gonna try to get them out this week.
Okay. And then cones on Ridge Street. there's 3 cones that are still hanging out there from where you guys have worked on. I don't know how long they plan to be there. Is there a need for them to still be there?
I'm not familiar, but I will find out and let
Okay.
you know.
Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir.
I have nothing.
Did Mr. Woods get a chance?
Mr. Wood, I gave him the eyeball. I didn't say his name, but. All right, so there's no matters from the board. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.